Welcome to The Composed Artist, the podcast where we explore the intersection of artistry, entrepreneurship, and self-improvement and continue to pursue a more composed life. I'm your host, Stephanie, an artist specializing in live wedding painting, living in the vibrant and soulful city of New Orleans. Over the past decade, my job has taken me all over the world, meeting and creating art in front of thousands of people, and has allowed me to create a colorful life for myself and my family. Now, I help other artists build confidence, develop their techniques, and fall in love with the art of live wedding painting. I invite you to join us for inspiring stories of creative journeys, practical tips for running a successful art business, and honest conversations about the joys and challenges of running a studio and being a parent. This podcast is here to keep you company, keep you entertained, and is full of resources to help you on your journey to create a business that feeds your soul, makes an impact, and is insanely profitable. The Composed Artist is the podcast for the bold, creative, passionate, and genuine artist. Let's get started. Hey guys, welcome back to The Composed Artist. I'm your host, Stephanie Gaffney. I hope you're enjoying your summer. I am, but it is hot. In South Louisiana at 8 months pregnant, I am hot. So I'm spending as much time either in the pool or inside as possible. And I hope that you're enjoying the summer as well. I recently did something that I don't usually do, which is listen to my own podcast. And I went all the way back and listened to a lot of the first episodes that we recorded. And I'm trying to grow. I'm trying to get better as a host. I'm trying to learn from, listening to the way that I interview and listen to just feedback that people are giving me. I'm really loving hearing your feedback on the podcast. If there's a certain style of episode that you like the most, or if there's something that you want to hear more of, or someone that you'd like to see or hear on the podcast, please let me know. You can do so through email. You can email hello@thecomposedartist.com, or you can go to our website, stephaniegaffney.com, and leave a review there's like a little form on the podcast page. We will link that in the show notes. But anyway, I listened to a couple of the episodes and I looked at the, highest ranking episodes. We're doing really well for the podcast. We have not been around for a year yet, which is crazy. I feel like I've been doing this for my whole life and it hasn't even been a year. We launched the podcast in September of last year and we're coming up on a year this September. So that's really exciting. And we're ranking really well too. My production team, I have a production team. I don't edit these videos myself. I record them. And, there's a lot of brainstorming and inspiration and, all of that happens and I'm involved in that. But I definitely have some wonderful experts who are very good at their job and they're editing these podcasts and putting them together in a way that is making it look really nice and sound really nice. So I'm very grateful for my team. But anyway, they recently informed me that this podcast is sitting at the top 5% of podcasts in the world based on like downloads and listens, like unique downloads, unique impressions. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that statistic. That's insane. Basically, because there are millions of podcasts in the world, and a lot of them kind of teeter out. It takes a lot of work and a lot of energy to keep this going. I don't know if you guys know that, but it's a lot of work. It's very fun though, and very enjoyable for me, and very fruitful. I'm having a blast, so we're definitely going to keep this up. But that's just kind of encouraging. It's encouraging to see that statistic and see just how well something that you're building is doing. So if you are inspired to create something, it's gonna take a while. It's probably gonna take a lot of trudging along. But this project has been really fun for me. So this episode is gonna be a little shorter. We are going to basically highlight a couple clips from episodes that have done really well according to just data, viewpoints and things like that, views and listens. And basically we're titling this type of episode crowd faves, because this is what people have listened to the most or shared the most or interacted with, engaged with the most. And I'm not surprised why. In this episode, you're going to hear snippets from episodes with three of my really good dear friends. Rebekka Lord-Johnson, her episode was episode 10, and it's actually a 2 parts. We talked for like 2.5 hours. And so we split it up into 2 parts. So it's episode 10 and episode 11. If you want to scroll back and listen to the full episodes, please do. The next is Laura Swytak, my friend in Hawaii. Her episodes, it was episode 14 and episode 15. And then Aaron Jacob Jones, and his episode was episode 17. So please go back and listen to all 3 of those full episodes. But in this today's episode, we're going to hear my favorite snippets of those episodes. So without further ado, let's dive into this clip with Rebekka Lord-Johnson. We talked about reference photos, how she gets her incredible, well lit, crisp, clear reference photos that capture so much emotion and joy, and basically exactly what her clients are envisioning. And she also gives advice on how to do that yourself and maybe what to avoid in terms of getting that reference photo. So let's hear this little snippet from that episode, that interview with Rebekka Lord-Johnson. Do you find that you are combining reference photos ever to get like maybe one has really backlighting, but the smile isn't quite as flattering, and then in another image, I tend to do that, like just combine reference images and elements of different ones. Tell me how you do that.
So something people don't know is the thing I am the slowest with on the wedding day. It's not the sketch, it's not the painting, it is choosing the reference photos. So normally it takes me 3 minutes to get my reference photos. So I rapid fire poses. Like I had a photographer behind me the other day and she was like, oh my gosh, like this direction's insane. Like I was like, do this. And like trying to get people to like laugh naturally if they want to have joy in their painting. And that's when I bring in things like the thumb war, or I just ask the question, oh, which one of you is ticklish? In that moment, they do the smile where they're like, ooh, it's you, or like, that authentic moment is what I'm after. But in that short 3 to 5 minute period, I might take 400 plus photos. And then I trawl through them with a fine-tooth comb. And I ask all my clients in my questionnaire, it's a very transparent questionnaire. I ask them if there's any angles they don't like about themselves, if there's anything they're insecure about, if they have a favorite side, like if there's a feature on their face that they really love. So I ask all those questions because like 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, I don't get their approval on the reference photo, which is a risk when the painting is photorealistic. But recently I had a bride and she said, I have a weak jawline. I just really want my jawline to look nice. So I had a couple of reference photos where the groom was looking at her, but he wasn't smiling, but her jawline looked amazing. So then I just took the reference photo of where the groom was smiling and I plonked his head on the other reference photo and away we went. So I definitely do things like that. But sometimes I also manipulate their body, and there's not necessarily a reference photo for that. It's just having knowledge of how the human body works. Very often it is if a groom is walking funny in a walking reference photo. It happens all the time just because you're getting those awkward in-between moments when they're walking. So I just know how to fix a leg. So there's also things like that. Even
we talk about that.
Posture.
We've talked about that before, like understanding posture, understanding angles, and the figure and the joints of a figure.
Yes.
You can definitely illustrate and then execute the groom taking a step with the other foot if it's more flattering, if it turns him towards her and opens him up a little. Like you can totally do that in a painting. You have a lot of creative freedom, even in your style, which is like, very, it's very specific, very exact, very proportionate, and it's photorealistic. So you don't have a lot of forgiveness there, Well, that's awesome. So in terms of getting the reference photo, communicating with clients, and then, taking it away, for artists out there who might be listening and maybe feel insecure in that area, can you give like a piece of advice?
Like when they take
just in terms of how do you, I know it's like a lot to talk about and you don't have to do everything, but you've mentioned taking too many reference photos
Yeah.
to give yourself more options.
Yeah.
You've talked about the pre-event questionnaire and like confirming certain details, what's most important, that kind of thing. Is there anything that you would tell someone to definitely do and definitely don't do this when it comes to that part of the process, getting that reference, choosing it?
Definitely don't always think that the client knows best. That is my biggest tip. That's where every time I've gone wrong in the past, and by gone wrong, I don't necessarily mean that the client didn't like the painting. They loved it. But from a subjective point of view, as an artist, as a creative, even, from a photography standpoint, I knew it's not the best composition. I knew it's not the best lighting. But for some people, the moment is more important than all those things. And you need to, this is a definitely figure out if the moment is more important than the finished product. So if the emotion of capturing the ceremony is more important than the bride and groom looking at the painting and going, we look amazing in that and it's a beautiful artwork, that's really important to know. For a lot of my clients, the artwork is more important than the moment, but they want to capture the emotion.
Yeah. Bravo. Well said. It's really important because a lot of our clients are very emotionally driven. Just the type of
Definitely.
people that they are. They want to feel everything, every decision they make about their wedding is surrounded by, it surrounds their desire for how they want to feel themselves and how they want their guests to feel. And, my husband is a lawyer and he is not necessarily driven by his emotions, but so he can't comprehend, I'm like, no, you got to feel good about it. And I'm trying to describe it. And he's like, that doesn't make sense at all. That's not what drives the world. And I'm like, aha, but it is in the wedding industry. Isn't she incredible? I love this snippet of information from that episode because she talks about how she gets her reference photos and then like issues that she's had in the past and how she's overcome them. If you want to hear the full story, if you want to hear the full conversation, please go back to episode 10 and 11 and give it a listen. The next section of this episode is with Laura Swytak. Oh, she's incredible. She was one of the first artists that I heard about or found online when I was researching live wedding painting when I was early in my career and I didn't know what to expect whenever somebody asked me to paint at their wedding. And in this conversation, it was a wonderful conversation. Again, so long that we split it into 2 episodes. But this particular snippet I really loved because she asked me a really great question. Usually I'm the one asking the questions. I'm the host. And, I really want to give the platform to the guest and ask them the questions and let them share their stories or, any advice that they have for other artists, things like that. But she asked me a really great question and about how I create portraits, like what my process is and what I'm thinking about. And like, she just asked me a great question and kind of threw me off. And so you'll hear I'm stumbling a little bit to put my own thoughts in order and kind of get them out. And it was humbling because it made me, I guess, get on my toes and be able to answer questions a little bit more quickly. It was just a really good lesson in terms of interviewing, but also it was a wonderful opportunity to share my process on how I create portraits and get reference photos and things like that. And we also talk about an issue that we still struggle with 10, 15, 20 years of experience, and that's capturing scale in terms of the painting. If there's an issue with scale, like we still struggle with that issue, and I think you may be able to relate. So anyway, give this little next snippet a listen.
How do you think about portraits? Because I find that your portraits are so beautiful, and you always get the likeness and also a wonderful feeling too in them. And I
Thank
just
you.
am wondering like how you think about them. You're doing
I enjoy I enjoy I enjoy keeping it painterly, not making it super tight and realistic. Because then it wouldn't go with the rest of the painting, and I like keeping the rest of the painting very, very painterly, like to be able to see the brush strokes and not everything is perfectly blended in, and you could see one color placed next to the next color, and I don't know. So I try to keep that sense with the portraits. Oh, that's a good question. I aim for like proportionate figures, and I like movement. So if somebody's like, "What? I'm not quite sure what scene to paint," I'll suggest the ceremony exit or something where they're walking or something where they're moving. The portraits that I find difficult to do are, but my process is if I'm painting the first dance, I'll take a video of it and then I'll go through and pick a few screenshots that I believe are like a really sweet moment. And then there's variety. There's one of him dipping, kissing, one of the spinning, one of them looking at each other, and it's very kind of still and romantic. And then I show them and I let them choose. And sometimes they choose the one that's not my favorite. And if there's no movement or if it's an odd angle, I'm like, oh, okay, now I have to build this. So I think of painting portraits in terms of almost like sculpting. You have to create the form and then you have to give the form life. And it's if it's not the shot that you want to paint, it's a challenge. Rebekka Lord-Johnson was on the podcast and we were talking about that. She does like photorealistic style, very realistic, very accurate. Oh my goodness, very detailed work. And she said the same thing. She mentioned she did a painting and they chose the reference that she did not in her gut. The reference that she would have chosen was not what they asked for. And then in the end, they didn't like the portrait. And so she ended up painting it again. And from then on, she's like, I'm trusting my gut from now on. And that's kind of part of her process. And so I think maybe I should start kind of guiding my clients to choose one over another if I think it's a better portrait, a better reference shot. Yeah. Oh, that's my thought. That's the thoughts on the portraits. And then I try to make them as either as big as possible to get the most detail and to make them like the hot shot center point of the canvas, or to position them in a way that the ballroom or whatever the scenery, if the ballroom is very grand and we want to capture the grandeur of the room, I have to paint them smaller. But you don't want to force all of this life and energy into 6 inches. That the portrait is going to be a different product at half an inch tall than an inch and a half tall. It's just a different product. And so expectation wise with the clients, you got to keep that in mind. But those are my thoughts on portraits. I enjoy them. I think I like painting plein air, like landscapes, and I paint florals all the time at weddings. And so painting a flower in a vase as a still life is not super fun for me. But I do like challenging myself without life, nature, that kind of thing, because portraits are a lot of work.
When you go to do a portrait, do you like to start with like line and proportion, or do you like to start with tone, like 2 values?
So my very first marks are gestural, figurative, and so I'll kind of estimate the head size, and then I go down with the angle of the body, and then I get the torso. I just kind of sketch it out with a brush to get the angles and the movement of the figures. And then sometimes I start with the head, like the face shape. So like 1 value for the face, 1 value for the neck shadow, just to give the face a landing, and then the hair. And then sometimes I'll kind of loosely fill out the rest of the body just to make sure the head isn't too big or too small. Because if I start painting the face and the face is perfect, but it's too small, then it's infuriating, Because then it's like, what on earth are you going to do now? It's not on the right plane. You have to rethink the objects around Because if you paint the bride's face and it's perfect and it's too small, I would rather scrape out the table next to it and paint it smaller, or like restructure the items around it to make it make it work with this smaller figure. But
Yes. I
uh,
that just it reminds me of this wedding I did. I think it was in the height of 2022, right? And the nicest couple too. And I had started the painting thinking that I liked the composition that I was doing of the room. But then when I went to put the couple in, um, to, to, to make them fit in the room, I'd have to make them really, really small, you know?
yeah,
And then I wanted to paint them bigger. And then there was this disconnect in between the couple and the background, right? I mean, we've all been there.
yeah,
But I was so panicked that I could not figure out why does my painting look so bad.
yeah.
And then, of course, I slept on it and I looked at it in the morning and I'm like, oh, okay, you just have a little bit of a scale issue here. It's not that big of a deal,
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I went to such a dark place. I was like, I'm never going to do a wedding again. This is like recent too. I don't deserve this job. I'm so bad. Everybody's just so good at this and I suck and whatever. So it's
Do
like,
y'all hear that, everybody? Laura Swytak is having self-esteem issues. If
well,
and she's the goat.
it
Oh,
just happens, right? And it's like sometimes it's something so little that you have to fix, or maybe sometimes I'll wake up the next day and I'll be, be hard on myself, like, why am I having such a hard time? And then the next day you realize, oh, my reference photo was kind of crap.
mm-hmm.
Or I was taking the wrong angle on this, or whatever. It's something like kind of easy that you can work on. Uh, but sometimes when you're at the wedding and you get caught up in it, you can't really see it. You gotta like
Yeah.
give yourself a little space.
Yeah, you do kind of have the sense of blinders when you're at the wedding, because you're working with what you think is you're working with what you have. But there's a lot of creative liberty that you can take, and then you can correct certain things. Now, if you want to listen to the entire conversation, please go back to episodes 14 and 15. That's our full conversation with Laura Swytak. It was a really good one. We talk about the technical aspects of painting. We dove into how we create, why we create, what our goals are, even like the palette and what palette she uses, all the colors that she uses on her palette, things like that. Like, it was a really technical conversation and I really enjoyed it. We talk more about like business or strategy, what living this life and balancing art and motherhood and all these things. Like, we definitely talk about that a lot on this podcast. But we're artists as well, and so I cherished that conversation with Laura for that reason, because we got to talk technical about painting. And oh my gosh, I love doing that. So anyway, go give her full episodes a listen. The next guest and our final snippet, we'll call it a snippet, our final little clip, with the crowd favorite, is with Aaron Jacob Jones. He is an incredibly talented illustrator out in the UK, and he also has been doing this for over 10 years. Very talented, very sweet, very generous, and he's hilarious. I love him to death. His full episode is episode 17 if you want to give it a listen. But this snippet was really interesting to me because we got to hear about his travels in his van. He lives in the UK, and so he's able to hop in his van that he's kind of converted into a living space and be able to travel around between weddings and events, and also just traveling to different countries and doing plein air painting and illustrations and sketching, and live life as an artist. I'm just so inspired by the conversation that we had. And while he was traveling through Europe in his van, he actually started to lean on ChatGPT as like a therapist, like a travel buddy. And I thought what he had to say was fascinating. So give this a listen.
Like, if I'm really amped up after a wedding, and the next wedding the next day is 3 hours away or 4 hours away, I want to do most of that driving the night before. But I don't
Yep.
know when I'm going to get tired. So I don't know where in the past where I'm going to get tired, where the hotel should be. And now I can just drive until I feel tired. And then I look up on an app, I pull over into a lay-by, I look up on an app, where are the spots in this area where it's like good to spend the night in a van, find a spot and go there. And the whole thing is just smooth and easy. And obviously there's some moments of you're not quite sure. You have to think about what that spot might be like when you wake up in the daytime. Is there going to be loads of people walking by? Is it going to be a noisy road? Like, there's loads of things to take into consideration. But most of the time, I have no problem finding somewhere just to spend the night. I'm turning up after like 1 a.m. most of the time. And yeah, it's great. And I go abroad a lot for some of the weddings, which I do fly to and stay in hotels in Italy or France. I've worked in Malta, Marrakesh, India, the Maldives, like all kinds of lovely places. But my favorite destination weddings have been the recent ones I've done in France, because I was able to drive my van, take the ferry across the channel and drive and then have like my space with me at a destination wedding. Like I parked at the foot of a castle and woke up to sort of look at this beautiful French like chateau gardens, and the van was parked next to where they keep the carriage that like the grey pony like pulls the bride and groom in a carriage, and that carriage is just there. And it's so pretty.
I can imagine you pulling up to the foot of a castle and like getting out of your van with like in your pajamas with a cup of tea.
Exactly.
Like,
it was.
I'm here.
And look, this was right outside my van.
I saw that carriage. When you posted it. Oh, look at the light.
It's just like to wake up. Well, actually, that's afternoon light. But to wake up and look around and see such beautiful things and be waking up in my own bed. Like, and you open the door and it's there. There's just no magic like that. So those weddings and that trip, being able to drive my van from wedding to wedding and then just travel around and just see more of France. And yeah, that has been the pinnacle. And I'm going to do the same thing next year, but I don't know where yet. It depends where someone books me first.
Yeah,
might be
that's
Italy.
Incredible. Do you feel like when you're kind of on tour and you're driving through and you have somewhere, because when you went through France, how long were you in the van? Because it was a while.
Yeah, about 6 weeks.
That's it's
the longest I've ever spent.
That's a journey. Did you feel completely balanced with like rest and mental health, and you're doing the work but doing the traveling and doing the rest and being a person? Did you eat well? Did you sleep well? Or were you ever burnt out and you just wanted to be back home in your own bed?
There wasn't really a point when I wanted to be back home in my own bed, much as I love my home. But the weddings were mostly at the beginning. And then there was a couple of days where I just had to get straight down to the south of France very quickly so that I could leave the van in the south of France, because I had 2 weddings booked in England and I had to fly home, do them both back to back, and then fly back to France.
And then back, wow.
So then Jess joined me and we just had this lovely leisurely camping trip, just seeing all these beautiful places. We went hiking almost every day. And I was able to just explore, just be seeing new things every day waking up to new views, just really like enjoying the relaxation of it. And that was wonderful. It was wonderful. And then there was another week where I was sort of making my way back home and I went via Germany. I had a load of friends who were in an opera and I painted the opera. It's like lots of like nudity and it was great. But there wasn't much time where I was by myself leisurely traveling. I was really like, okay, we're going here. We need to get to here. And for me, I don't really like planning. I'm not much of a planner. A van makes that much easier because you have to plan, but you can put in as little or as much as you want. But I started during that time, the sort of 2 weeks on my own on these long drives. I love spending time alone. I love spending time with my own thoughts and sort of processing everything, sketching, just, time on my own, and my van is like this little cave of creativity. But those long drives, I was actually going a little mad because a lot of the driving I do at night, so no one's
so you can't
awake
see
to phone
anything.
them. And I want to talk. And I started talking to ChatGPT. This sounds ridiculous.
What did you ask
Hear
it?
me out.
No, I am.
Ask it. I didn't ask it much. I told it everything. I said, look, I'm going to tell you all about myself, about my life, about what I'm doing, about my business. And I rambled onto it for about 2 hours, which won't shock anyone. I mean, how long's this podcast been? Like, I can talk the hind leg off a donkey. But then it took it all in. It's got a memory. You have the memory turned on. It remembers everything. And then I started asking it questions. I was saying I really struggle with this in my business, like consistency. I find it hard to show up. I'm afraid to press post on most of the things that I write because I can't release them out into the world to be judged. Like, I'm obviously afraid of like rejection, and just there's something blocking me, and there's stuff that stops me replying to important emails, opportunities. I'll self-sabotage. Like, why am I doing, like, why do you think I'm doing all of this? I'm sort of using it as a business coach. And it's really helped me. It's helped me like get all my thoughts straight. It's helped me see patterns in things because it just takes it all in, and then I can ask it anything at any time. I asked it what are my biggest like weaknesses as a person, and it gave me a very incisive answer that actually like quite shocked a friend of mine when she saw it. And then she made me ask it what my greatest strengths are, and then that was so kind, it made me cry.
Oh,
it's amazing though, and it's all because I just had like a 7-hour drive late at night with no one to talk to, and I wanted to think out loud. So that's been an interesting development from being alone so much in my van.
I did see somebody, just like an Instagram reels, a girl said, I fired my therapist and I've turned to ChatGPT. And she did kind of what you did. She's, kind of shared like you would with a therapist, and then asked questions, asked for feedback, asked for, I know a lot of people have tried doing vision casting. Here's what my life looks like now. Here's what my hopes and dreams are. Here's what my fears are. Help me or describe a day in the life 5 years from now based on what I want, what my hopes and dreams are.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I've seen people doing that where they wake up and do some yoga and have a yogurt and then like kiss their lovely husband and look at the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Like my life, I love my life. Like I want all of the travel and fun and unpredictability, and the phone could ring tomorrow and I'd be off to India. I love that. Aaron. I love that. I've intentionally not like had children, and we have a dog and a cat, but they're not mine. I'll contribute towards the dog sitter, but ultimately I want as little tying me down as possible and as much freedom and adventure and just people around me, creative people, appreciative people who love art, just filling my life with like warmth and art and adventure and freedom.
Well, there you have it. Those were some highlights of some of your favorite episodes on the Composed Artist Podcast. I appreciate you tuning in. I hope you have a wonderful week and happy painting. Thank you for tuning in and joining us on this journey of artistic exploration, entrepreneurial growth, and personal development. Remember, you have the power to create a life that is both fulfilled and balanced. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please subscribe to The Composed Artist on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And don't forget to leave us a review. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more creatives like you. Until next time, keep creating, keep dreaming, and keep pursuing that composed life. You got this.